Good evening to everybody. We're starting off Parshat Vayeshev, also second day of Chanukah, and we're going to read these Parshiot about, I would say, some sort of black mark on the Lichora, on the Jewish people, because we read about all these stories, all these chapters that have to do with the sale of Yosef. I'd like to just raise a question raised by all the Mefarshim. It's not mine. What is the relationship between Mechirat Yosef, between the sale of Yosef that is, according to most authorities, happened through the brothers, and the going down to Egypt, the bondage that there was in Egypt? So some people say there's absolutely no connection, because the going down of Egypt was already told to Abraham Avinu years and years before, and it was therefore either connected to something that Abraham did, or, as others argue, is something that is beyond the grasp of us, because if it was for Abraham on account of what Abraham did, or that he didn't believe enough, he questioned Hashem regarding Eretz Yisrael, etc., so how could it be that Abraham got off scot-free and the people who paid the price were his children? Okay, so just let's leave that a moment, that group. But as I say, there are Mefarshim, there's a difference of opinion between the Maharal Prague and the Abarbanel as to the relationship between the sale of Yosef and Yitzhak and going down to Egypt. And there's a confusion, or there's a difference of opinion, what's the cause and what's the result. The Maharal Prague is of the opinion that the sale of Yosef was the cause of everyone going down to Egypt. In other words, Hashem wanted, as he said to Abraham, to go, that Am Yisrael should go through some refining process in Egypt. So therefore, he set it up in a way in which the brothers sold Yosef. And indeed, what is very supportive of the Maharal's approach is that it's just look at it, it's unbelievable. We don't find anything in the book of Bereshit or in the Torah. We don't find any retribution or punishment for what the brothers did. How could that be? That means that, according to the Maharal, he understands on the basis of many midrashim that all this was like a setup. There was a manipulation of the feelings, etc. Okay, there was obviously culpability, minor culpability on the behalf of Yaakov and of the children, but it was all a setup. The Abarbanel says exactly the opposite. He says that that as a result, that the cause of going down to Egypt was because of a punishment because of the sale of Yosef by his brothers. And now, so that's what he says, because the Jewish people, because the tribes, what they did was they sold Yosef, so as a punishment, they went through to Egypt, and the slavery, etc., took on the form and the intensity that it did. Okay, so now what I'd want to do is I'd like to raise the following issue according to the Abarbanel. Who were the main culprits? Again, what I'm going to do now is, according to the Abarbanel, that the going down to Egypt was some sort of punishment. The way that it transpired was because of the sale of Yosef. I'd like to, as I say, raise the following question. There were 12 brothers, right? And who were the main culprits in the sale of Yosef? So let's see. Yosef's the victim, so he's ruled out. We've got 11 left. Binyamin wasn't yet born, right? When Binyamin was born, but he was young. He wasn't there at the time. He was with his father, so he's ruled out. We're left with 10. Of the 4 out of those 10 were 2 from each concubine, Gad, Asher, and Dan and Naphtali. They were Dafka, the friends of Yosef, as the pasuk says over at the beginning of Parshat Vayeshev. It says over here that V'hu nar et b'nei Vilha et b'nei Zilpah neshe aviv that he used to keep company, Dafka, with the children of the concubine, because the main brothers, the children of Leah, they used to treat them with a certain amount of disdain or contempt. And he wanted to Dafka befriend them, Dan Naphtali, Gad and Asher, so he stuck together with them. And he championed their cause. He stuck up for the underdog. Okay, so that's out. So who's left? 6 of the brothers are left. Okay, Reuven now, he tried to save Yosef, as the pasuk, as the Torah said. He said to his brothers, "Don't kill him. Let's work out another plan." Yehuda also said, "Why should we kill him? Let's try and maybe he saw from afar that there was some sort of caravan. Let's sell him." Okay, so they out. Yisachar and Zvulun, the tradition is they didn't seem exactly the violent type. They were more into trade, more into learning. And who's left? Basically Shimon and Levi. And yes, that the Midrash over there shows Shimon and Levi had a history of not such nice behavior. We know what they did in Shechem, but of course they did it to save their sister who was kidnapped and abducted, right? But okay, they had that temperament. So basically, according to the Midrashim, we can work it out logically, they were the main culprits. So now let's ask the following question. If, as according to the Barbanel, the going down to Egypt was some sort of like retribution for the sale of Yosef, how could it be that the main culprit of who was involved in the sale, one of them was Levi, right, Shimon and Levi? How come that Levi basically got off scot-free in Egypt? The only tribe that was not enslaved in Egypt, right, afterwards, was the tribe of Levi. And indeed, as everybody knows, all the leadership which led the Jewish people out of Egypt, they all came therefore from the tribe of Levi. The 2 brothers and the sister, in other words, Moshe, Aaron, Miriam, right? They all came from Levi because they weren't. They were some sort of aristocracy that never ever was subject to the harshness of the slavery. And in fact, in parentheses, the Meshech Chochmah says an unbelievable thing. The Meshech Chochmah, who lived in who passed away 1924, I think, more or less at that time. So Rab Meir Simcha Medvinsky says, we know that all the tribes could own land in Eretz Israel, excepting for one tribe, and that's the Shevet of Levi. And why? Just listen to this, amazing. He says because the people who Am Yisrael, who went through the pain and the torture and the torment of going into Egypt, they deserved to be compensated, and therefore they felt the full measure of slavery. Therefore, they deserve the full measure of happiness and independence, which is to have land in Eretz Israel. On the other hand, Shevet Levi didn't feel the full measure of slavery in Mitzrayim. They were not subject to any slavery. Therefore, they don't deserve the full measure of freedom and of happiness in Eretz Israel. They come to Eretz Israel, but they didn't own land in Eretz Israel, Shevet Levi. Okay, close the parenthesis. So back to our question. According to the Barbanel, the going down to Egypt in the form that it was, with the slavery and the intensity of the slavery as a result of what they did to Yosef. So how come the main culprit? He himself, Levi, was not subject to any slavery in Mitzrayim. That's the question. And the answer, or the explanation that I want to propose, is because here you see the great ma'ala of tshuva of Shevet Levi. Yes, Shevet Levi was violent with his brother in defending his sister. But you could see that in Egypt, he refined, so to speak, that violence. And what he did was his true inequality of loyalty came out. So let me explain. What actually does the word Levi mean? Levi means to accompany. when Levi was born, so she gave him that name Levi because she said, look, I've got 2 sons already, Reuven 1, Shimon 2, and as Nechama Levi used to say, you hold the one child in this hand, Shimon in this hand, and then you've got another child. Well, you've only got 2 hands. So therefore she said, now my husband is going to accompany because he's going to have to now hold the hand of the 3rd child. So Levi means to accompany. Right? That's why we say, we call, when we go to the funeral, we call it a levaya. We accompany and escort the person, the deceased, to his ultimate resting place. So Levi means not abandoning, accompanying, escorting, supporting. That's what Levi is. And what Levi did was that in Egypt, he did about his real character, about being loyal, which beforehand it was expressed in a violent way of like killing the people of Shechem because what they did to his sister. But he refined it and he totally committed himself to being loyal, not abandoning the tradition of the Jewish people through the Torah and supporting Am Yisrael. So he was the quintessential Baal Tshuva Levi. What he did was then that he turned things around. And as the Rambam says so movingly, in Hilchot Yesodei Torah, in the laws of Avodah Zorah, he said the tribe of Levi, they brought out their inner characteristic of loyalty, of always accompanying Hashem, of always supporting, that they were the only tribe that never ever bowed down to Avodah Zorah. They never ever worshipped Avodah Zorah, not in Egypt, not in Chet HaEgel, and that's why they were chosen as the tribe to serve in the temple, because they were the tribe who were the most loyal. So we asked a question that Arei Yetziat Mitzrayim, I mean the going down to Mitzrayim was a result of the punishment, or if you want to say, of what happened to the sale by the brothers. The main culprit was Levi, and Levi wasn't at all subject to slavery. Answer, because Levi turned things around. He did Teshuva. And what he did was he brought out from himself his characteristic personality of loyalty, of accompanying. And he kept the Torah. He never worshipped Avodah Zorah. And that's why he was able then to avoid, because of his Teshuva, to avoid being a slave in Mitzrayim, unlike the other tribes. So that's the great power of Teshuva. But notice the power of Teshuva dafka through Torah. Shevet Levi was known, as the Rambam said, they never worshipped Avodah Zorah. Shevet Levi was the one who always kept the tradition. Shevet Levi was the one that in the desert they always did Brit Milah. They kept the Torah and they never ever bowed down at Chet HaEgel. So the dedication to the Torah, as we say in our prayers, Hashivenu Avinu LeToratecha, when you return us to Torah, right, that is the first step in Teshuva. The commitment to Torah helps a person to be a true Baal Teshuva. So Shabbat Shalom Lekulchem.